So here's my system. 2x plus y is less than or equal to 4, and we have y minus 1 less than or equal to 0. So we have to graph both of them. I like to put them into slope-intercept form. So on the top one, let's move the x term. That gives me y less than or equal to negative 2x plus 4. Now that I can graph. Now remember, when you graph, you start with the y-intercept, which in this problem is 4. And then my slope is negative 2. So my slope of negative 2, it's negative 2 over 1. So I'm going to go down 2 and right 1 from the point that I've already graphed. So down 2, right 1. So right in there. And then is my line going to be dashed or solid? It's going to be a solid line because it's equal to. And shading, well, we have to decide, is it going to be kind of above the line or is it going to be below the line? And the best way to do that is to test a point. So what's the easiest point to test? 0, 0. So if I test 0, 0, oops, that means I'm going to replace. I'm testing this point right here, 0, 0. So I'm going to replace my x with 0 and my y with 0, and I want to see if I get a true or false statement. So I would get 0 on this side. Is 0 indeed less than or equal to 4?
No.
Yes, it is. So what that tells me is that 0, 0 is the true side. So everything on that side of my graph gets shaded. So there's the first line graphed. Now we have to graph the other inequality, y minus 1 less than or equal to 0. So whenever we have just a single variable, you need to solve for it. And remember, when there's a single variable, it's either vertical or horizontal. So since this is a y, that means it has to cross the y-axis at 1, which means it has a y-intercept. And will a vertical line or a horizontal line have a y-intercept? Yeah, in order to go through that point, it's got to be a horizontal line at 1. And it's solid. And now these are the easiest kind of shade. You really don't have to test a point on these. Because it's less than 1, then anything below your line would be less than. So that gets shaded. Now where the overlap is occurring, this is your solution. Every point in that overlap would make both inequalities true. Everything that's kind of in this right section that just has the orange all by itself, those only make y minus 1 less than or equal to 0 true. But it won't make 2x plus y less than or equal to 4 true. So there's no way that you can write all the answers to the system of inequalities. The shading represents all of your answers. Okay, so 21. Oops. 21, we have t cubed plus 512. Now remember, when you're factoring, the first thing you should always look for is a greatest common factor. Do we have a greatest common factor between t cubed and 512? Do they have anything in common? No, they don't. So the next thing it could be, if there's two terms, is difference of squares. difference of cubes, or sum of cubes. And this is a sum of cubes. And this will be on your formula sheet. On your formula sheet, it'll say, I think it uses, what, A's and B's? It'd be A plus B, and then it's A squared plus 2AB. Oops, this one should be, let's back this up, it's a minus. It'll be minus 2AB plus B squared. That's what it says on your formula sheet. So how does that translate for our problem? What's A and what's B? Well, A is what's being cubed in the first term. So for our purposes, A equals T. And B, well, what's being cubed to get 512? Any ideas? And if you don't know, how can you use your calculator to help you find out? Do a cube root. Do a cube root of 512 and see what you get. Do you know how to do a cube root? It's in your math menu. I don't remember which option it is. I want to say it's 4, but I don't remember for sure. You should have a cube root option of 512, 8. So what that means is wherever we see an A, we're going to put a T, and wherever we see a B, we're going to put an 8. So I've got T plus 8. I've got T squared minus 2 times T times 8, and we'll simplify that here in a minute, times 8 squared, which we can also simplify. So T plus 8, T squared minus would be 16T plus 64.
A squared minus AB plus B squared.
Okay, let me go back and fix that. So let's take out this 2. Because I'm like, did I just make that? Because I don't have a formula sheet in front of me, and apparently I forgot. So that would leave it just 8T. There we go. T plus 8, T squared minus 8T plus 64. That's our final answer. So I just kind of made up that 2. I don't know, I'm just throwing in numbers now. I'm acting like you, Roger. Just throwing in numbers. So we have 3x squared minus 3x minus 18. Okay, so we're factoring again, and remember, the first thing you always do when you factor is look for a GCF. Do we have a GCF? 3. We do have a GCF. They all have a 3 in common, so let's factor that out first. That's going to leave me x squared minus x minus 6. Okay. Now we have to check and see, will x squared minus x minus 6 break down? And if it does, it will break down into 2 sets of parentheses. Now, x squared minus x minus 6 shouldn't be too hard to break down because it's 1x squared. Remember when there's just like that imaginary 1 sitting in front? We can think of factors of 6 that add up to -1. So our first factors would be x and x. Are there factors that multiply to get -6 but add to get -1? And remember with 6, you don't have a whole lot of options. You've got, nope. You've got 2 and 3 or 1 and 6. How could you possibly get them to add to be -1? Well, if the 3 is negative and the 2 is positive. That would definitely multiply to get -6, and that would definitely add to get you -1. So we'll put in a +2, and we'll put in a -3. And there's our factored answer. 3 times x plus 2 times x minus 3. I think that I can fit it here. We have x squared minus x equals 42. And the directions say solve. Now, whenever you have to solve a quadratic, we have to get 0 on one side. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus x minus 42 equals 0. So what I kind of did in my head was I just moved this 42 by subtracting 42 from both sides. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because then I can, when I solve it, well, I have options actually now. Now that you know how to do quadratic formula, you could do quadratic formula on it. Or this should factor. And I know that because it's going to be easy to factor. It's got that imaginary 1 in the front. Factors of 42 that add up to 1 or a negative 1. What are your factors of 42?
6 and 7.
Yeah, you got 6 and 7. So this will definitely factor. We've got x, and it'll be 6 and 7. Which one gets the negative? The 6 or the 7? The 7. And the reason why we know that is because they have to add to get a negative number. So that tells me that the larger number has to be negative. So when we FOIL this back through, you can definitely check your work, but negative 7 times 6 is negative 42. And you get 6x and negative 7x, which definitely combines for that negative 1. Now, we're not done because when we have to solve, we then have to, if the answer is 0, then either the first number, which is x minus 7, equals 0, or the second number, which is x plus 6, equals 0. And then you just have to solve these two little mini equations, and so you'll have two answers. So it looks like x could be 7 or x could be negative 6. So two answers there. X equals 7 or x equals negative 6.